Hi, welcome back to InnoFX Live. We're here with Felix Martinez and Tim Remmert. We're going to be talking about the business strategies and the combination of using hybrid or continuous processing. I mean, this is a big topic, guys. I got to say, I've been talking to a few people, and it seems that no matter what topic we started on from today, modularity or bioform, everybody's talking about continuous or semi-continuous process. So Tim, let me ask you, what do you perceive as a hybrid process?
Well, oh, you can hear me good. What we've been experiencing just recently in the past months and almost years is that there is a trend in the pharmaceutical industry to seriously assess continuous processing. Not just talking, but looking into regulations, looking into possibilities and opportunities to truly implement it. So where we stand today is that equipment manufacturers offer such equipment. There is interest in the market, and I think the point of no return for this technology to truly come alive is past. We just don't know how long it will truly take until we find many equipment in the field.
Well, Felix, what is your take on that?
Well, I concur with Tim. However, I believe it's a couple drivers that motivate the industry right now as it's moving towards the CDCs. And probably will be more into the patent expiration, right? And the highly competitive market of all the over-the-counter drugs. So that motivates a lot to looking at new technologies and new improvements on equipment, especially from the industry looking forward, and reformulate some of the well-known products on the industry. So that's probably why they focus right now to get these approved by regulatory agencies, and looking in the continuous processing. In particular, I can speak of over the facility. The improvements over the facility on the space, like you were mentioning, modularity right now. Everybody's looking at to get these pods, plug it into the facility and connecting it and start to running on it, right? So this hybrid with the existing operations and new technologies, I think is a new trend in the industry, like Tim mentioned it.
Well, Tim, one of the things that is a stumbling block, I think, for a lot of people is how do they manage a continuous process or a hybrid process, and how do they how do they come up with a business strategy?
Well, the benefits are great. Less footprint, small equipment running continuously, eliminating possibly scale-up strategies, doing numbering up. Start small equipment, use it, and just use it longer if you want to do more. And if you look in today's batch processing, I've seen a study from GlaxoSmithKline one day where they were assessing one product, saying from the order into manufacturing until it's a packed product going into sale, it takes 30 days or 29 or 31 days in that area. But truly, they were working on the product maybe only 4 days that something was happening. In the meantime, it was resting, waiting for analysis, waiting for laboratory results before it could move on. So all this is eliminated if we work in a continuous fashion.
What do you see as the stumbling block for most companies? Is it the regulatory aspect? Is it the testing aspect? What do you think holds them up?
I would say that it's from the point of view of reformulation existing products that you have on the market. Not much from the regulatory. I know that the QDBs can be taken seriously, and then you can achieve that. But I think it's from trying to get this technology in place within the current market than on the small particle. It's not many things on the R&D and the pipeline. So it doesn't get too much attention on the industry. Right now, it's starting to ramp it up, as Steve mentioned it, looking at it from the point of view of the life cycle of the facility, looking at it from the point of view of quality, containment in one unit, So that kind of can motivate the discussions with the regulatory agency to get a faster approval, looking at it with good eyes, you know, whatever is coming up from the CDCs. Talking a little bit of the strategy that Timmy was describing, I concur with him. It's a lot of benefits. However, you know, the industry has been looking at it, obviously, and compare current technologies with this new technology and capacity. So.
Also, let me add something. The hesitation is, it's not true hesitation. First, you got to find a product. And none of the pharmaceutical companies like to touch an existing formulation, an existing product. So first, you got to think what product could be transferred or could be developed in a continuous fashion. When I have that, I'll work it from there. So either you are in big trouble with your processes today, or you have no reason to change, or the risk is too high to change. So all these groups addressing these technologies are assessing and discussing what product could we take to transfer or to develop into a continuous fashion.
So Tim, let me ask you this then. When a client comes to you to talk to Bohle about some equipment, is it usually it's new and I want to put it in this equipment, or it's an old product and I want to shift it to this equipment? What is it?
We are experiencing both, but mainly it's new, but in the terms of new, it's a new formulation. It's not a new molecule. It's a new formulation for some drug that they are addressing. We had one case where customers coming and saying, my process is not stable, and continuous processing is also about process understanding. If I don't understand my process right, I have no chance to implement it in a continuous fashion.
Well, this is one of the things that we talked about this morning, and a couple of different, was that the ability to understand the process up front. Early development is absolutely imperative in this case. And there's also a strategy. Certain companies adopt a roller compaction strategy, which kind of puts them on the welcome mat of continuous process. What do you think about that, Felix?
Well, certainly it's true, Russ. I can speak of in my experience, but you're certainly right. Roller compactor is actually one of the things that is put in a way of the CDCs because of the capacity that you can get out of it. With the current technologies, that makes the deal, and the investment is actually lower. However, as Timmy was mentioning, some of the key factors that I will focus on it will be the reformulation of certain well-known patents and the new patents combining, like a fixed combined product. That probably is actually what it triggers a lot of the industry to looking into this technology and say, hey, can we get these well-known patents and reformulate, have it the same size, and done in a continuous process? That motivates a lot. It's a market of it.
Roller compaction is a continuous process to begin with.
Yes.
So is tablet compression. We have continuous blending units available. We have dosing equipment. Film coating is something else, but it's also available now. So bringing it together, the strategy of using roller compaction as a granulation module is the first choice.
I think a lot of companies, they worry about what am I going to do with a continuous process. I see nothing but advantages. If I need more for market, I turn it on. If I need less, I turn it down. But more importantly, I rather run a process that's at stasis rather than turn it on and off every time. You know, the startup is minimal and the shutdown is minimal. So to me, continuous process is the resolution to inter-batch variability, from my standpoint. But let me ask you this. Do most of the companies that come to you incorporate PAT aspects into their continuous process?
I don't think it can work without. Because if you're thinking continuously, you put product in and you get however you far want to carry it, in the end maybe a tablet out. And you only want to test the final product. During the process, you want to stay in your parameter range. You want to do that, but you're not going to have a batch report after every unit operation. So without PAT and controls is a challenge.
Okay. So in that particular case, are we looking at parametric release, or what are we looking at? Felix, what do you think about that?
I think I concur with Tim. Yeah, we're probably looking at parametric release. Do not modify what you currently manufacturing will be the key in this game right now.
Okay, so let's just think for a minute about, let's talk about some of the faint at heart. Some of our, let's face it, not every company out there has got the resources to go after it. But let's just think for a minute. We notice that we use the term hybrid. To me, a hybrid is, it takes the best parts of continuous process and uses that. It's, in other words, maybe it's not continuous in the true sense of the word, but it's a hybrid process. So what has been your experience? I mean, do you see it as a true continuous process? Do your clients look at it as a hybrid process? For example, you mentioned coding. Clearly the coding, if it's not a continuous coder, is a hybridization of the process, right? Because it's batch-wise, correct?
That's correct.
As it is today, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have a continuous process completely from one point to end, all the way to packaging. So you need to use the hybrid approach, right? So you need to look at opportunities, how your current operations are running and how you can plug the CDCs to make it more efficient.
What's the nature of the dosage forms? Obviously, most of them are oral solid, but what are they usually? Tablets or?
Tablets.
Predominantly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What you see is basically you have two big parties, big portions addressing this. Either you want to create big volume or vice versa. You want to do something very special and run your continuous process or your hybrid system for so much time or so much time. And like the very high quality, true pharma, or nutraceutical vitamins, large volume. We've been addressing from our end the true pharmaceutical applications. And there are limits. And when you come to PAT or you come to whatever your formulation have, you must understand, is it sensitive to temperature? Do I have a wide range of particle size distribution of my ingredients? What am I looking at? And from that I derive in the risk assessment the tools I need to control this. And maybe, yes, you need to go to hybrid because certain unit operations are not fully developed or are not available to compose your operation. But I think, Felix, there is a big drive, at least from the vendors, to start or to develop equipment from dosing to a film-coated tablet. Is it in operation? I don't think in full fashion yet.
Correct.
I've seen, in my travels, I've seen a lot of companies have a lot of investment. And we won't go into whether or not they're actually making product, but we'll talk about that it's operational. One of the things I find that they do, and I think it's because of lack of foresight or lack of planning, the question always comes up to is, what other products could I make in this continuous process? Well, I think the three of us understand that that's kind of tough if you didn't do any planning. So, I mean, that seems to be another misunderstanding. So have you seen this when your clients come to you, Tim? Or how flexible is it going to be,
Well, how flexible is it going to be? In the end, one composition, one arrangement will be there for one group of product or one formulation. The customers that come see us, either they have their formulation already in their mind, that's what they want to do, or they just come to test and play and check and get a feel for continuous manufacturing because they have not identified any product that they want to address.
So Felix, let me ask you this then, from your standpoint, working for a large pharma, what philosophy as far as, what do you file? Okay, so I got this continuous process, so what do I file? What's the basis? Everybody knows the batch paradigm, so what's the strategy here?
Well, you got to look into the market. You got to look into what is the strategy you're looking forward for some of the well-known products that you have already, either of the patent is expiring or you're looking to develop a little bit something new. Also, you got to look at it from the perspective of the patients. We got to focus on it, and we, as a BMS right now, we focus on it. Other industries, they might take different paths, but that's, I think, is the key factor. Also, approach the physician position. See what actually the well-known treatments that you can utilize and you have in your portfolio.
All right, let me ask the question a different way. A lot of companies file a batch size of 10 million tablets.
True.
All right. So what do you do with continuous process then? I mean, you gotta define what you're going to call a batch. What strategy have they been using? If this is something you can comment on.
In the end, you also determine a certain amount of tablets you want to make. So that is the amount of ingredients that is continuously going into your feeding systems. And of course, you had some in the beginning and some in the end that you're wasting until you're in steady state. So it does make sense to run for some time. But in the end, you are defining a certain amount you want to make.
True, you have to look in the throughput capacity. Certain that you're gonna run certain batches and you're gonna decide to stop. And then the benefit with a continuous process is that you can run it like you were saying, and shut it down on the next day when you finish that batch. And validation, it wouldn't be a problem if you continue having the same production.
Basically, today in batch thinking, you are making an amount of tablet, X kilograms. Now we're talking about capacity, X kilograms per hour. Doing it so many hours gives me my amount of product that I can define a batch and register.
So you see these people filing it as a time base or a number?
No, capacity.
Capacity.
Capacity is the determining factor.
So what gives us the flexibility on the low end? We file it with the maximum capacity, and if say, for example, one of the advantages is not to make as much at some point, and then we just assume that the bigger number covers that? Or?
Don't get me wrong, I was not talking about registering about the regulatory affairs. I was just pointing on what is the size of the equipment I select.
I got you.
And that's a capacity. And we find for true pharma, it's not so big. It may be 20, 25 kilos, 30 kilos per hour. Because the smaller it is, the easier it is to control. But I can use that so many hours, making more.
From the point of view of the decision, you certainly got to look in through how many tablets, how many million tablets you're going to produce. So that's, from the regulatory standpoint of view, is how well formulated and how well your quality as a product came out from the CDCs. That's what is actually, probably right now is being the major driver in the industry, trying to get the approval in the regulatory environment. Perhaps not with a high volume, right? It's more for trying to get one formulation approved with a continuous processing. That's probably the key factor right now.
So as a business strategy, let's just think about that. High output, low value, like nutraceuticals, for example, or what would drive a business strategy, Tim?
That's one. The other one is vice versa. Small, special formulations for truly pharmaceutical applications, no nutraceutical, pharma that have are today being made in small batches, could be transferred and do it in one room, in one restricted area, in one contained, controlled environment, rather than having a full facility today. And that could give you the business case of being also flexible. Yeah?
I can take it from the owner side. I will concur with Tim. The life cycle of the facility, it's a major decision factor. Having a reduced footprint, everything potentially being in one room, not as a ballroom, but as close enough to it, that makes the deal for many of the companies. And then right now, we spend millions and hundreds of millions either renovating existing facilities or creating new ones. With a lot of our systems, an environmental system that it has to comply with several regulatory elements for just people to be accessing to the suites. With just one equipment, it reduces the risk is reduce the maintenance operation. So that's probably one of the major strategies that everybody is looking at.
Well, I would think another way is one of the things that I would look for. It would seem that this would lend itself to containment. Yeah? So based on that, Tim, I mean, a lot of people come, is that one of the things that they expect to be part of this, is a containment for a potent compound?
Well, any continuous system is basically a closed system to begin with. So there is some type of containment, whatever it is defined. You could obviously pop it up if it's required to a higher containment level and equip it with certain measures. Could be split butterfly valves, or even put it in an isolator. That I didn't see yet. But if it becomes necessary, it's easier to capture than in one room, in one connected area, rather than having different equipments, unit operations all over the area. And let me add one thing. Today we have a launch facility. A new product is coming to market. It's being launched out of one area with different unit operations in the traditional fashion. And then it gets transferred to Asia, to other places in the world. And a new facility is built, a new solid dosage area with new rooms, with utilities, with everything. That is a challenge to begin with. Big engineering companies spend time and money of doing it and obeying local requirements. If it's only in one room, this transfer is much easier. And there is an approach by one of the big pharma companies saying that I have my continuous line here in one location and I want to be able to quickly move it to any other place in the world. And it's one room. It's not a full facility.
Yeah, plug and play. It's a big factor. Modularity, as you were discussing, the new fashion on pods, and have everything in one room that you can move and relocate as needed. I think is what Tim is describing. That's what motivates like companies like mine to make a decision. Hey, can I get the approval for some regulatory agencies, not only in the U.S. market, in the Europe market? Right? Why not?
So I think one of the things that was talked about this morning was that the facility of the future is not necessarily going to be a facility. What we talked about is modules, or actually they talked about podules or podular, whereas you just back this thing up into a freighter and airlift it to wherever you want it to be. From a regulatory standpoint, it's fabulous because it's essentially all the same information. It's the same process, same everything. The only difference is it's got a different zip code. But I think that brings into mind a different approach. So, and I think what that means, what I'm saying, somebody has to develop the process. Then that's the one that's cloned. So when they come to you, Tim, do you develop a process, or you see what I'm saying? In other words, you have to be able to make clones of this process. You know?
So far it has been a process.
A process, okay. Yeah. Hey, keep thinking.
But maybe that changes because you can only do so much at a time, but it has been a process.
I think it has to be flexible enough to overcome whatever are the needs of the particular industry or particular market that you're targeting. Of course, it has to have some rules to make it into compliance, but I think the key factor that Tim is discussing is that a particular process that it can be well reproduced in several arenas, in several areas, in several countries, that will be fantastic. Mm-hmm. You know,
from an equipment point of view, you could look at this continuous line as a modular toolbox. And I take out one unit operation and I exchange, for example, the roller compactor against a twin screw extrusion system. And have a continuous dryer after and do another type of granulation. So that type of flexibility is there, but the development to have it run in commercial use is quite some work. So I personally don't think that one continuous line is going to serve, at least at this point in time where we are with the technology today, it's going to serve various products. It's going to be for one product, for one family of formulations. Just think of the feeding in the very beginning. How many different ingredients do I have? Is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 6? And what does that mean for my equipment, for my controls, for my blending afterwards?
One of the things we've seen is a hybrid, in the hybrid systems, was application of, even in this case, the reason I've seen more, you see more of it as a pickup, is because it uses wet granulation. But essentially it's a modestly sized granulator combined with several fluid beds, so that essentially it's the same process size every time, and it's not really continuous. And I don't know, I think a lot of people try to apply that model. I'm not so sure that that applies all the time.
It is a challenge to have every unit operation a truly continuous operation. Drying is one area. We've made lots of testings with film coating, and if you want to do a large volume or small volume, it can work truly continuous, but we've also experienced that you possibly have to work in a semi-continuous fashion in film coating, because the quality you can reach, the film coating uniformity is not good enough. And in film coating, it's a good test. If you take your amount of tablets, you feed them continuously in the coater, and you take 100 tablets and number them, and every 30 seconds you put in a tablet. And then you keep collecting them, and it's not coming out 1, 2, 3, 4. It's coming out 2, 38, 12. So what does that mean for my quality, for the residence time in reality? So not every unit operation necessarily is good for truly continuous processing. Of course, it also depends on the formulation and the product I'm addressing.
It's a term that probably we use normally in the industry, like by like, right? And when we're trying to say that, sometimes is that we are so used to manufacturing in certain way, and our operators, our formulators, whoever is dealing with the production of certain product, it's difficult to make it understand a new system, a new technology, like we were describing, talking about a granulation system. Companies running for years and years with old systems, then many times it's difficult for companies like the team to address certain issues, and there were lack of maintenance in some cases, lack of experience on the technicians or the operators, and knowing what they can achieve with certain equipment. So with this new technology, it's a challenge for all of us to looking at it with a fresh eyes and said, hey, this is an option and it's feasible, right? Why don't we do this? It's even for the quality point of view, they don't like too much the changes. Nobody likes it.
Okay, so let's just stop. Again, I apologize coming up, I come from a development background, so I always get hung up on the batch. Remember, that's what it's always been. So the question really comes back to, at what point do you define it as a batch? I'm hearing the capacity, the throughput. I'm good with that, all right? I think what happens is when you take it and then dissect it out into separate pans again, you have to confirm that you haven't imparted any differences. I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up. But that's why I think your comment about co-extrusion and roller compaction, to me, that's probably got to be the technology of choice, bar none, because it's continuous, it's and it renders more uniformity. Is that really what you've been seeing?
Roller compaction, or a dry compaction line, meaning dosing, continuous blending, roller compaction, milling, tableting, possibly coating, is what seems to be the technology that we can capture first. Other unit operations may be much more complicated than this. So roller compaction or dry compaction is the first choice anyway, because it's a very efficient process if your formulation allows you to be compacted. At least for my company, I can say this is the first one we are addressing in much more detail.
Felix, comment on that? So I think I think one thing you have to remember is not everything can be roller compacted. Essentially, I think you brought up a good point, and I've seen this from experience. The material itself has to have sufficient plasticity to survive 2 compressions. the densification compression, and the compacting. A lot of times, roller compaction negates the plasticities, whereas you can't compress the tablet at all. That's a tough nut to swallow if you find that you've done that. But I would think co-extrusion lends itself to that as well. It's a sort of not quite wet granulation, not quite fusion. Have you seen anybody looking at that as a co-extruder?
Twin screw extruders are in the market for some time. There's one big vendor pushing very hard, has implemented systems for commercial use. But I think mostly isolated as, granulation and drying in a hybrid system. But I think it's also a technology that's suitable, and you will see it more and more. Another critical item that we haven't addressed, where does your continuous process start, where does it end? After tablet compression, we all know I cannot go directly into a coater. I need some relaxation time before I can put a film on a coat, on a tablet core. So here I'm getting in continuous fashion, my tablets out of my compression machine. And I'm collecting them. Where am I collecting them? In buckets or small bins. And then after some relaxation time, that bin or that amount of tablets is going into coating. Do I have a batch? Do I have sub-batches? And the idea, I think, should be, I'm not considering it a batch in this moment. But there are points to be addressed even between the different unit operations.
Right. I think it's up to the owner, to be honest, to declare where the batch is. I think in a lot of people, where you think all of your homogeneity is. So the question really is as it comes out of compression, you rightly note that is the integrity, because after that, when you break it down into separate coating pans, you're imparting the same segregation again. So the idea is uniformity has to be demonstrated upstream, okay? That's important, and a lot of people seem to forget that. Hence my question always is, what do you call a batch? So in that case, it's the biggest part, it's the biggest piece. So you got to define how much is that piece going to be. Is it going to be 10 million, 15 million, 6 coating pans, 5 coating pans? It really doesn't matter. I think the strategy and the testing comes in. So that brings us to the next point. Testing is always the thing that people throw in our face about being the thing that makes this inordinately expensive. So Felix, from the owner's side, what have you seen about that?
Well, I see, like Timmy was describing, a lot of technology being taking place and considered on, but at the end of the day, certainly it's capacity which has been taken more in consideration, in particular with rolling compaction. And also having the same validated process and formulated all over the place. That's the secret. If you already have a well-known product, you don't want to change it. Only if you have an opportunity in the market, then it'll allow you to make some minor modification, then it will improve that quality of the product, or the size of the product, or the type of the product. Then is when you get back into companies like Tim and ask, hey, what else is in the industry? I would like to get something else, a new equipment, then it will improve my turnover on the market.
So, modularity, hybrid process, expensive products, low-value products. So, how far back into the development pipeline? I would think that a company has to come up with, let's talk about business strategy. I think at some point, you know, somebody has to say, if it's going to be an oral solid dosage form, it's going to have to follow 1 or 2 technologies. You see what you understand my point? So
that
what have you seen?
Quite early.
Exactly. Exactly.
It is certainly a need. The industry is not much in the pipeline that I have seen in the R&D, then it can be considered as in a small particles, play, and it can be considered as a good product. I believe everything is to be reformulate all recipes and combine it.
How early on do they come to see you, Tim? Do they come, you talk to early development guys, clinical guys, who?
On the early development guys, no, it's beyond early stage. So there's a formulation, they know how they want to make the product, and then there's an assessment. Could I possibly do that in a continuous fashion with the unit operations available, or do I need to stay with my regular batch processing? So when they come to us, they have an idea of how that product is to be made and what unit operations are needed.
This gets back to the theme that was early on this afternoon when we talked about selection of processes. And it's surprising how adverse a lot of firms are to put the money in up front. It would seem that a business strategy like this, which would be a market adjustment very quickly, very nimble, would be something that you would want to take on. You know, first, what's the philosophy of just-in-time inventory? How much better could this possibly be? So I think you have to look at integration. So maybe one of the things, other than selling hardware, one of the things we got to sell companies is a strategy and a philosophy how to incorporate that into their business. What do you think, Felix?
I think many of the companies right now, they're taking, you know, what we call the excellence program. They're looking at the lean operations and being more efficiency in all the manufacturing processing, even in the quality approach, and expedite a continuous process as much as they can. However, and Tim, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Continuous process actually improved that quite well. The market right now is in the need to something, and it helps to minimize the engineering controls and the administrative controls, and it helps not only from the point of view, hey, you have an equipment. Yeah, I agree. You need to have a current procedure and a QDB that is well defined to get your product in the market as soon as possible. So the strategy normally is how fast I can turn over. That's what every company, and then we normally see that it's a big major push in every single company, how fast I can get it. I think through continuous, you know, processing, you can achieve all of that. But as Tim was mentioning before, companies, they're already looking into these opportunities, but they're looking at it from the point of view, already have a product developed, right? If they're looking at it from the beginning of the cycle and approach companies like Tim, from the beginning of that strategy or that thinking, probably his company can actually successfully achieve more on the whole operation.
I also think we haven't really come to a point in our industry where there are so many business strategies. It will come, but at this time I think Big Pharma is interested in this experience. Yeah, we've listed all these advantages and they see them. So why not find one formulation and try it and gain our experience, learn about it, put one line in where we have a product and get that experience. And then we'll see the commercial benefits and see if it translates into other products. So I think in this moment we are also in a kind of exploring stage for Big Pharma to learn about this, what our true experiences are going to be with the regulatory affairs, how long does it take to qualify, to validate such a system, what is a true benefit if we have our own experience from time to market, and collect all this information.
I think, to me, it makes perfect sense. To me, why not, if you're going to do a clinical program, if you can immediately flip the clinical service form to a market form simply based on the manner in which you manufacture it, that's fine. I think that's what this type of process speaks to. The other part of the process that my colleagues and I sometimes go over with our clients is the concept of scale up versus scale out. In other words, if 750 liters is okay, don't make it 1,750 liters. Make it another 750 liters. And I think it's the boat anchor philosophy. You know, I don't want to get stuck with this equipment when I'm not using it. I think that is another hurdle we have to get past.
Yeah, well, equipment size is a topic, but ideally you find, have your line maybe not so big, And if you want to make more product, you don't do scaling up, but you do numbering up. You just put a second line next door of the same size.
Yeah, oversizing is always a major subject in every single manufacturing. And we normally tend to do that, not because we want it, it's because the demand, sometimes you get overestimate on the market. Tim's point is well taken. Continuous processing and small batch sizing will give you that benefit. If you have a demand on a particular product, you can run it for certain batch or certain units. And if it's needed to ramp it up or disrupt it, you can just turn it on and off. As simple as it is. That's what the beauty of this system. Current systems, most of the companies are taking them back and even dismantle some of the operations that they currently have because they can maintain that. It's a lot of the trends in the industry to consolidate operations and reduce that and start to selling all this old equipment that they utilize for quite well some time.
I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think the old let's buy a 150 cubic foot blender just because I want to make it that big, I think those days are kind of gone.
Yeah.
All right? I think people have that rational approach, and that tells me again where I'm at. If I'm already agreed that the scale out as opposed to scale up is the approach, the next logical position has got to be either hybridization or full continuous process. I've checked the regulatory requirements. FDA makes no statement as to what a batch is to be. It's simply what you're satisfied as testing is efficacious and safe. There is no requirements.
Yeah, FDA is supporting the continuous process approach. Big time. Their universities, Rutgers University is interacting with the FDA frequently, and I think maybe that's not a batch, but it's then a determined time. So I'm manufacturing my product for 3 hours, and in 3 hours I get to this result.
I think they have to come to, I think what we're missing, not we, but the industry is missing, or maybe they need advice. And that advice is, this is the testing protocol, or this is the approach you can take to satisfy that requirement. Again, what you're going to see there is the hesitance of the upfront spend. Because you know what? You got to spend an awful lot of money on this testing to get it to where you want it to be, where it's going to be efficient and cost effective. So you got to spend the money up front. And to be honest, for as many products as I see in our business that are defective, I got to say that a lot of people still aren't doing the work up front. They're just not doing it.
It is true. You gotta think about in the capital investment, but also you have to look in at how fast it can be the payback, taking it from the point of view of the life cycle of the facility. So it's a lot of these numbers that it takes in place that it makes the companies step back sometimes for the decision to jump into this technology. True. But also it's because, like Timmy was mentioning, the regulatory environment still is a little bit uncertain. It's several companies that lead that effort as we speak, and they have some long runs in the on regulatory environment to get the approvals in the U.S. market and the European market. But it's not much to criticize from the process of the equipment. It's more from the quality approach. That's what has been taking a high level of consideration. Yeah, FDA looking at it with a really nice eyes because it's a continuous process, everything enclosed, no risk, right? But it's quality, what is looking at, hey, wait a minute, all my procedures, all my programs, inspections, they gotta be rechanged and redo. So that's what it takes quite some time to make it validate and say, yeah, we can move on with this.
Well, we're going to start to wrap it up. Tim, is there a couple of thoughts you want to leave the group with today?
Yeah, I'd be an interested follower into what direction it is going. It is to be assumed that at least for our work life, the batch processing will remain for a long time, but the expectation would be continuous processing to slowly make its way into the market. And I think in the next few years, hopefully, we'll find big pharma implementing those lines, and then we'll have followers once these regulatory things are a little more sorted out, a little more clear sky. But I think we have passed the point of no return into that technology.
Felix?
Well, I would say, Russ, that you know, from the point of view of the owner side, it's a lot of things that is a challenge. Then everybody is looking into that, like we've been discussing throughout the whole session. But certainly the use of new technology, and I don't want to change the you know, the subject of discussion of this session, or like the session in the morning with Facility of the Future, is certainly a benefit for a future of the pharma business to looking at opportunities like the modularity with the CDCs and playing to that arena. It's a major trend in the industry, trying to have a continuous process, well-defined, approved by everybody, that it can be plug and play throughout the world. Right? That will make the deal and take all the approach on the all conception and time to develop new projects, time to implement those projects and put it in place. It's all well done and well defined in the industry. I think is that what is has been taken an advantage in the pharma business. The world experience over the technologies and the processes.
Well, thanks, Felix. Thanks, Tim. And thank you for everybody for joining us for this section of Interflex Live, solid dosage form, business strategy, continuous manufacturing, and hybrid system. Go out and see how you can rationalize it yourself. I think it's it's open and there's a lot to be done. Thank you.
Thank you.